Well, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you all for joining us from everywhere that you are, and those in Denver. And if at any point you have trouble seeing or hearing anything, please let us know in the chat or raise a hand if you're there in person. My name is Dale Correa. I am the Middle Eastern Studies Librarian and History Coordinator at the University of Texas at Austin. And I happen to be the chair of the Digital Scholarship Interest Group Steering Committee, which has been a great honor of mine. And our group wanted to organize an Arabic or right to left language, OCR focused workshop for you all this year. And it just so happens that our colleagues who have been working on, the Open Islamic at Text Initiative, the Arabic Catalyst OCR project, and all the related projects under that kind of umbrella have developed a software called eScriptorium that has a lot of potential and that we wanted to bring to you all. And hopefully stir up your interest in it and see if you might want to try it out yourselves at some point. And to show us that software and tell us a bit more about it is one of the experts on the project, Dr. Jonathan Parks Allen. And he is a Mellon postdoctoral fellow at the Roshan Institute for Persian Studies at the University of Maryland. He's a historian of early modern Ottoman religious and cultural history, and is currently working on various projects at the intersection of Islamic history and digital humanities, with a primary focus on the application of digital methods to Arabic script print and manuscript texts. And so I'm very happy to welcome Jonathan to our session today. And Jonathan, I will let you just take it away.
All right, well, thank you so much. I feel like that description is a bit more grandiose than most of what I do is just moving data around.
that can be a lot in and of itself.
Which is what a lot of us do. Yeah, so just a couple of things to clarify, because we want to give credit where credit is due. So eScriptorium is actually really a kind of a joint development. We ourselves kind of came in after it was already underway, being developed. So it's a kind of a multinational, multi-institution team, most of which actually are located in Europe, in France and a few other places, who sort of got eScriptorium going and now are kind of bringing it out to other contexts. And what we've been doing is really helping to adapt it for Arabic script purposes. So what I think I'll do first is talk just a little bit about what we've been doing with eScriptorium and kind of what we've been doing with OCR and where we're going with HTR as well, because I know some people in the audience will be interested in that too. And then I'll spend a few minutes doing a demonstration, a kind of a walkthrough of eScriptorium and its current capacities. I will preface by saying what I'm going to show you today is what eScriptorium looks like at the moment, but it will be different in the future. So we recently engaged the services of some design experts, which is something we realized that we really needed. And we're undergoing a pretty good sized redesign of eScriptorium that we hope will make it a lot more user-friendly. It's not like user-unfriendly at present, but there are definitely places where it can be improved, both in the functionality and in kind of the overall layout. So what you see today will not be what you'll see in probably a few months' time, precisely. The basic capacities that I'll show you, though, will still be there, and there will be expansions as we go along. So for those of you who don't know, and I know looking at the people present, I know some of y'all will be familiar with what we do at OpenITI, because we've worked with you in the past. But so the Open Islamic at Text Initiative, we do a lot of different things, but overall our goal is to improve and to kind of better facilitate access to digitized Islamic texts in multiple formats and contexts. So we started out kind of working primarily with print, with digitizing print stuff and making it available in electronic text format. And also in why we kind of got into eScriptorium, or one of the reasons, in order to let other people do this as well. So not just us kind of digitizing stuff and then putting it in marked up format or whatever, but to generate tools that other people could use as well, whether it's for OCR, for manual transcription, and eventually for handwritten text recognition. So we initially Oh, thank you, Dale, for that link. We initially, back in, oh my goodness, 2019, which seems like a decade ago. It's not. We initially tried doing a kind of in-house OCR platform that we called, oh my goodness, forgotten the name of it. It's been that long ago. Shoot, I'll think of it later. But anyway, we developed something kind of in-house, and it wasn't that great, to be totally honest. We experimented with it. We never made it really like public facing in any way. And we kind of realized it just wasn't going to work. Fortunately, we were able to connect with the eScriptorium team led by Ben Kissling and some other people. And they were willing to kind of bring us on board and to help develop eScriptorium for Arabic script capacity. And our initial usage of it, or one of our primary usages, has been to improve Arabic script OCR. So our primary project over the last 2 years or so, and one that we're kind of wrapping up now, is to generate very robust, around 98% accuracy levels, generalized OCR models for Arabic script. And at present, we're about where we want to be. So between 97 and 98% accuracy, higher for some typefaces, a bit lower for others. But using eScriptorium over the last 2 years, we've used it to generate lots and lots of training data. So it's been kind of stress tested through a lot of different users and purposes, primarily for print. We're kind of concluding that phase of our project. And now we're moving on to handwritten text recognition, which is a much bigger nut to crack, as you might imagine. So at present, my kind of day-to-day usage of eScriptorium is primarily as a manuscript transcription platform. And as I'll talk about in a minute, at present, these are two kind of different things. If you're using eScriptorium for print transcription, we now have transcription models that will let you do it automatically, both for segmentation and for the actual transcription of the letter forms. For manuscripts, it remains mostly manual. The models that we've generated will work on a few cases. So if you have, for instance, really nice Ottoman Nosk, if it's very neat and orderly, the automatic segmentation and transcription are okay. But for most manuscripts right now, it's a matter of handwritten transcription. I will say eScriptorium is, I think, a very good platform for that as well, compared to other routes, both sort of proprietary and kind of, putting your notepad next to a PDF of the manuscript, which is what I used to do. Yeah, I think eScriptorium is probably a superior way of doing transcription, even if it's manual. In the future, what we hope to release, and we of course don't know exactly when, it may be as soon as next year, it may be 2 or 3 years from now, but we're currently working on handwritten text recognition models that will let you do automatic segmentation and transcription of Arabic script manuscripts, ideally from across the tradition, all through time. So I won't go into the details of how we're doing this, but suffice to say, we're taking a couple of different approaches with the hope that at least one of them will be successful and that we'll get some robust models. We don't expect to have as high of accuracy rates as with print for kind of obvious reasons. That said, our initial experiments that we've done have been really successful. We've been surprised actually at how high the accuracy rates are, which is better than the alternative in the other direction. So we're hoping that in the future, you'll be able to use eScriptorium, not just for print, automatic transcription, but for manuscripts as well. With the goal, well, lots of goals. Obviously, people have a lot of different reasons for wanting electronic text of print or manuscripts. eScriptorium is relatively agnostic towards your end goal, or rather, it permits a lot of different end goals. If you just want a plain text, right, for whatever reason, it can do that. If you want it in, goodness cat, Alto or Page XML, if you want it in TI markup, these are all functionalities that are allowed. So eScriptorium, and I should go ahead and switch over so we can look at it. It permits a lot of different functionalities and a lot of different levels of engagement. Let me see, anything else that I want to say about that work that we're doing? Does anyone have any questions kind of about what I've said thus far, sort of what OpenITI is doing and kind of what our kind of larger goals are? People raise their hands, I guess I can see. Okay. All right, well, if not, I'm going to go ahead and pull up eScriptorium. And what I'm going to do is kind of show you the different functionalities, kind of walk you through it. If you are interested, and I'll reiterate this later, if you're interested in doing a kind of a trial run of eScriptorium, it is not currently kind of fully public facing, but if you want to try it out, we'll let you in. All I need is your email address, and I can generate an account for you, and you can get started. And I'm always available via email to answer questions, to kind of take you through any issues that you may have. And we would love for people to try it out. Well, I won't say quite the more the merrier. There's probably an upward limit at how many people we can sustain on our servers right now. But in general, like we'd love to have more people use it, to give us feedback, which we're able to use as we continue this kind of redesign process. So let me go ahead and share a screen and show you. All right.
Jonathan, can you just
Yes.
take a question before moving on? There was
Sure.
a question in the room. Okay, thank
Sure,
you.
go ahead.
Hi, Jonathan. This is Joan Weeks at the Library of Congress. I was just wondering
Hi,
how
Joan.
all those book trucks that you came over, and what we had is a lot of material going to offsite storage in Arabic and Persian, and how those fed into the project of OCR, because they were mostly modern Arabic works, and I'm glad to see that this is transitioned, but maybe a little bit. This was started before the pandemic started, but got interrupted, and then you came back on site when we were able to reopen the reading room, and we brought truck after truck from that stuff going off-site storage. Thank you.
Yeah, so one of the things we wanted to do with our OCR models, one of our kind of big goals, was to have a generalizable model, right? So I assume that pretty much everybody here is familiar with Arabic and Persian and other Arabic script books. You'll know that while you don't have the typographic diversity of, say, Latin script for a variety of reasons, there is definitely diversity of typography across the Arabic script tradition. And one of the things that we discovered kind of early on was that just making sense of that diversity was rather difficult because the secondary literature just wasn't there. It has improved in the last couple of years, and there are a couple of recent volumes that explore this history and the contours of Arabic script typography a lot more, fortunately, but we didn't have that when we started. So one of the things we wanted to kind of figure out was how good was our coverage of Arabic script typography, right? Were we capturing everything that was there? And a lot of our work over the last couple of years was really directed towards kind of answering this question. Unfortunately, we got started in 2019, in the fall of 2019. And as Joan mentioned, we had a sort of plan worked out with the Library of Congress to do a bunch of on-site visual inspection of material. And we were scheduled literally to start in like the middle of March of 2020. And then, just everything was screwed up. So we were set back quite a bit. While there's a lot of material on the internet, as everybody knows, you can find tons of Arabic, a decent number of Persian books. We also recognize that a lot of what you get on the internet isn't necessarily representative of the kind of the full gamut of Arabic publishing over the past 150 years or so. There's a lot of biases kind of built in. So one of the things that we've worked on doing, particularly since things kind of opened back up after 2020, was making sure that our typographic coverage was in fact representative. Unfortunately, we were eventually able to work with the Library of Congress and to do exactly this kind of sampling of printed editions, particularly stuff published over the last 20 or 30 years, which is what we had trouble getting because of the pandemic initially. I will say, so we're gonna put out a white paper probably in a few weeks or so, and then we'll have an article, a journal article in another couple months that will look at these things in more detail. But we feel pretty confident that we have covered the the majority of the typographic tradition in Arabic, and that our OCR models, our model rather, our latest model, gives very good coverage. That said, I will say for those of you who, particularly people who work with older books, so 19th century and early 20th century stuff, there is a lot of variability. For those of you, particularly who work with 19th century stuff, you'll know that like typefaces degrade over time. The standards of typographic printing weren't necessarily always, the best, or money was often lacking. So even though our model may give you about 98% accuracy on most stuff, there are always exceptions. So I will preface that so nobody comes like complaining, why your 1850 volume from the from Egypt isn't getting 98% accuracy. That's probably why there's something going on. All right. Any other questions before I move on? All right. So let me go. Actually, I'm going to go to the front page of eScriptorium to kind of show you what you see when you log in. So eScriptorium's kind of our organization within the site has improved, and it will improve further as we go along. Originally, you would just click in and you'd have a long list of documents. It's now subdivided by projects, and each one of these projects will contain the individual documents that you're working on. So, and these documents can be, of course, either printed books or manuscripts. And in the ones that I'll show you today, there's kind of a mixture. So let me find, actually, this is print, isn't it? Yeah. So we'll have a look at one. So I'm only going to show you things that I've previously uploaded, but I'll just talk just briefly about the upload process. eScriptorium supports a number of different formats in terms of files. It's really kind of envisioned for PDFs, which I imagine most people will be working with. So you can import PDFs directly, and it will disaggregate the individual images of pages. So you don't have to go in and do it yourself. You can upload individual images, which I know if you're working with manuscripts, you are somewhat more likely to have, right? If say you have certain folios within a manuscript that you want to transcribe, you can drag and drop your manuscript pages into eScriptorium. Once you've uploaded your pages, you can then run a number of processes. Now, the processes that you can run are going to vary depending on whether it's print or manuscript that you're using. With print, you can do almost everything automatically with pretty minimal cleanup. So initially, you can automatically segment your pages, and I'll show you what that means. So the segmentation means drawing these lines across the lines of text. And when these lines are drawn, what eScriptorium does, this is one of the things that we liked about it, it automatically creates these masking areas, or kind of bounding boxes around the letter forms. And so generally we'll capture the entirety of the letter form. Here, this is one place where I think we're sort of continuing to work on improvement. As you can see, sometimes orthographic details kind of lie outside of these, outside the masking. Occasionally, even in print, parts of the letter forms will be like above or below the masking. You can modify these manually, although this is also an area that needs future improvement. Generally with print, as you can see here, the masking is quite good. So pretty much all the letter forms are captured. After you've done your segmentation, you can then do your transcription. In this particular text, I have not run transcription on, so I'll go and find one. Had I done automatic transcription, the transcribed line would appear down here. And let me actually go to, so I can find where this is been done. So these are all, let's see, we'll look at an or do. Here we go. So eScriptorium will automatically generate a transcription, and then using this line, you can correct it. If you're working with a manuscript, you will generally have to do both the segmentation and certainly the transcription manually. Let me go back and show you a manuscript looks like. Actually, I think I have one already open. Yeah. So manuscripts at present are considerably more work, but this will change over time. So these lines I drew manually and then went in and did the manual transcription. So this is something that our current models, our current OCR models just would not support. Sometimes you might be able to do the segmentation automatically in a manuscript, but oftentimes there are enough problems that doing it manually is less work. This is something, though, that will improve in the near future. So over the next year or so, we hope to have considerable improvement. Let's see. So that, I mean, that's kind of the heart of what eScriptorium is. It's a transcription platform. That said, there are a lot of other capacities that it has. So you can, in fact, train your own models. Some of y'all may be familiar with, well, I won't say their names, but we do have competitors that you have to pay for that allow just this, right? You produce a bunch of training data within a manuscript, and then you can train a model to automatically transcribe the remainder. So eScriptorium that's not really its primary purpose, but this is a capacity that it has. So if you're working on manuscripts right now, and say you have a particularly a long manuscript that you'd like to automatically transcribe, if you generate enough training data on your own, you can do this. I mean, you have to generate a lot. We're talking, goodness, probably 40, 50, 60 pages, but it is a possibility. Let's see, other things that you can do. Something that we're working on that I think will be of particular use in manuscripts is automatic recognition of regions. So by regions, I mean kind of the different components of a page. So in this case, we have kind of what we've labeled an illustration and then the main text, but also things like marginalia, interlinear, catchwords, stuff like that. So in the future, our models will allow a pretty relatively fine-grained capture of these details. This is important because, let's say once you've produced a transcription of print or manuscript or whatever, obviously you want to do something with it. So eScriptorium supports several different export features. And in the future, it's possible that we will have at least a couple of additional ones. So as I mentioned, you can do plain text. You also have page alto, and we recently added our own OpenITI Markdown and OpenITI XML. These are still sort of in kind of production. We're still refining them. One thing that we would like to do in the future, and honestly, I can't give you any definitive ideas on when this will be possible, but would be to export OCR searchable PDFs, which I know for those of us who work on manuscripts, this would be particularly attractive to preserve the overall the visual element of the manuscript, but to be able to search within a PDF with that overlay of the text and then the electronic text lying kind of behind it, I guess would be the way to put it. So these are things that are in development. Something else that's going to change in future iterations of eScriptorium once our development team and our designers are kind of done. All of what you see here will be quite different. There will be a lot more information on the progress of your text. So telling you, how much of the text has been transcribed, giving you estimates of accuracy rates, telling you things like word counts, line counts, stuff like this, things that can be particularly useful. So that's all coming once the redesign is completed. Let's see, other things worth mentioning. So we won't go into that. This just has to do with the regions. Oh yeah, I guess something that's also worth mentioning. So at present, you can share material within eScriptorium. Those capacities are not as good as they could be, but they'll also be improved in future iterations. So the ability to kind of work as a team on the platform is going to be substantially improved in the future. Also things like kind of the organization of documents and searchability within and across documents is also going to be improved. So, all right, I'm trying to think anything else that I want to cover. I mean, to get started on this platform and to start using it for transcription and creating electronic text, it's pretty straightforward. And then there's sort of additional kind of layers that you can explore and manipulate kind of as you go. And in the future version of eScriptorium, it will be a little bit less daunting looking and considerably more kind of user friendly. And a lot more will be kind of immediately visible that right now you have to kind of tinker and kind of navigate in special ways to find.
So I am wondering from, the librarian's perspective,
Mhm.
If we would ever want to employ eScriptorium, for example, on an institutional level, like for when we're digitizing Arabic script and related works in our collections and trying to make those available, how could we implement eScriptorium, with our digitization departments? Or the other kind of use case is using eScriptorium in recommendations to patrons that come to us for advice on digital humanities projects, right? And getting them started with that. So what I'm really, I guess what I'm particularly interested in, and others can chime in too with what they'd like to see. Could you take us through just a very basic, like, here's a print text and how you get it uploaded and get started in eScriptorium with it? I mean, you showed us some pieces of that, but just, like, what does that initial process look like, and what might an initial output look like from eScriptorium?
Sure. So I'll just suppose do a test.
Sure.
Let's see. So I don't know. I'll grab something off. So I'm going to set it as Arabic. Fortunately, it switches the direction. So the initial thing is just to import a PDF. Now, I will say, so what I'm doing here, this is text by text. If you are on an institutional level, it really depends on how many texts are you digitizing, how many are you converting to some kind of electronic format, right? If you're talking I don't know, a manageable corpus, I don't know, dozens, hundreds of texts at the most, probably. I think this is doable, right? There is, as you sort of scale up, I think you have to kind of do other things. So there are ways using the underlying engine, which is something called Kraken, which was developed by Ben Kissling, who's kind of one of the point guys on this. There are ways to do kind of bulk transcription projects using the kind of underlying elements of eScriptorium, right? So this is one way to do this, but the tools that we're developing, so things like Kraken and the OCR models, the segmentation models, they can be deployed in other ways if you have, sort of the technical know-how and the institutional capacity. So particularly for libraries, there are kind of other routes that you could potentially go, right? So eScriptorium is primarily meant for individual users and for institutional uses up to a certain level, if that makes sense.
For sure.
But the overall infrastructure can be implemented in other ways, which is, and I should mention everything that we're doing here is open source, it's non-proprietary. So not only the tool itself, the models that we generate, but the nuts and bolts are available for people to make use of, if they can. So let me find a text and just see what happened to me. Let's see, where's one that's print. These are all manuscripts. I know I have some print stuff on here somewhere. Oh, that's probably. I don't think that's the best example, but I'll just show you what happens. And it's probably going to be slow. There's I don't remember there's like a name for this, like the rule of like when you're doing a live demo of a electronic platform or whatever, like inevitably it freezes up. So yeah, this one's going to cause. I'm gonna try something else. Of course, it's going to do this. This is like 50 pages. This should work. Oh, come on. There we go. All right. So, another thing I should mention, the way eScriptorium works is individual entities or institutions have their own kind of what we call instances of the platform of the program that we host on our servers. So this particular instance that I'm on is hosted at the University of Maryland on our servers. We have a certain amount of capacity right now. In the future, we hope to expand it. But it has happened. And one of the reasons why it's good that everyone in this meeting is not on eScriptorium right now is it would inevitably slow it down. So you will encounter, sometimes I'll get on here and things will be running a bit sluggish. It's because a certain number of people have logged on. But again, this is something that as we get more users, as we can kind of demonstrate that people are making use of this, interested in it, we can hopefully we can expand our server capacities and increase the overall speed.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so actually, this is pretty quick. This is a small document, but our import is done. So after you've imported your PDF, you just select everything, and then you run the next process. So this is something else that's going to be improved. These processes can take a while, depending on the size of the document, how many people are on it. Right now, you have to just scroll through the pages and look and see if it has this yellow bar. So this tells you that the process is running. In our redesign, there will be an icon. I forget exactly what it'll look like, but it will tell you your progress. 50% done, 75% done, and then 100% eventually. So you can immediately look and see, is this finishing up? Because you have to wait until all of these lines have segmented. If they haven't segmented, you can't do your transcription.
Right.
And it can take a little while. Yeah, right now it tells you this import done, but you don't know well, where is it done? Or no, sorry, import segmentation done. It'll tell you that, but it doesn't really help you a whole lot. So yeah, since we're all watching it, it's going to be really slow.
Okay.
But once this process is done, then you'll go through to transcribe, and then you can edit. And here, it really is a question of, what are you doing with the electronic text, right? Are you creating a critical edition from manuscripts? Are you doing computational work on, a whole bunch of electronic texts? Depending on your use case, you may not need to do any kind of post-process correction work. Or you might want to be really meticulous. It'll just vary a lot.
Yeah.
You can also, and I'll end on this, but you can also select what parts of the text you want to export. So for instance, I think this particular little text has footnotes, right? If you're doing computational work, you don't want those footnotes. And you can select when you do the export, I only want the main text. And if the regions are drawn correctly, that's something you might want to check, you'll only get the main text and not the footnotes. And that can be really, quite useful for a lot of use case scenarios.
Oh, that's really interesting. Can I ask, have you all tried it on columned text, like periodicals?
Yeah. So this is one place where I think we need more training data, to be honest. So this is an issue of segmentation and ontology. Most of the texts that we trained on were editions of pre-modern texts, and they were books primarily. We've done some kind of pseudo columns. So if you think in Persian poetry, they're not real columns. We haven't done a lot with true columns. Okay. And right now you would probably have to do some manual modification to ensure that it would work out. But that's something where it would be wonderful if there are people out there who are doing this and who would like to share training data with us so that we can generate more robust models.
Yeah.
And we're still, right now we're still kind of working on these what we call regions analysis. So this very issue. We are also in kind of not quite final, but the next stages of improving Urdu OCR. So right now we're at about 90% accuracy, which is actually not that great. It sounds okay, but we want to greatly improve it. And we're working with a team of folks at in Pakistan, actually, who have been kind of collaborating with us for the last, I guess, just a couple of years now. And we finally were able to get some funding for them to kind of like not full time, but larger scale collaborators. And we hope by sometime next year to have our Urdu OCR numbers equal to Arabic and Persian.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, while we're waiting for the segmentation, does anybody else have other questions about what we've seen so far or what we could look at next?
Raising their hand virtually. And I let me go ahead and put my my email address in the chat. If you would like to sign up for a an account, feel free to email me and I will I'll generate you one. It's very straightforward.
Joan Weeks again, just another quick question here. Looking at, I've been looking at some of the databases now that early Arab works in the British Library. You can enter search terms and it's going into the text. There's some, and I'm wondering about what, whether this could be an app or an add-on or something into searching in databases of content in Arabic digitized works, and what opportunities are for that. And it seems like right now it's just OCR for PDFs, and what the opportunities are for things like JPEG 2000, which when we are digitizing Arabic manuscripts, we have this wonderful script on the screen in JPEG 2000s. So just kind of what other, thinking out of the box of future applications of how this might be embedded in databases and searching for through manuscripts that are already digitized.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so so eScriptorium is a platform for doing this kind of thing. But the OCR models and the segmentation models, they can be applied in other contexts as well. So including the sorts of things that you're talking about. I mean, I think, I mentioned a little while ago, one export function that I hope that we have relatively soon would be an OCR searchable PDF, which I think could be really helpful for some of the reasons that you bring up, especially for manuscripts, but also for just books in general. I will say, if anybody has used Google Books recently for Arabic script, you'll probably have noticed their OCR has improved pretty substantially over the last year. And not to brag on our team, but part of that is because they use a bunch of our data, which we've since kind of modified or tried to modify our licensing so that it's still open source, but like more rigorously non-commercial. They didn't steal it, like it was available, but they apparently incorporated some of our training data. So, and that's part of why they've improved their.
Yeah, that's something that I was going to ask about, because I haven't explored it probably in a year, but on Google Books, if you find an Arabic manuscript in Google Books, it is usually has HTR applied.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's pretty good.
It's gotten very good. Yeah. When we started this project, it was pretty abysmal. That was just a couple of years ago, but over the last year or so, they have improved quite a bit. And part of it is because they've had some good training data. I mean, there are other reasons too, including, they have the budget of God or whatever. The thing is, and people have sometimes kind of asked us, it's like, well, then why are we doing what we're doing? And it's because, Google has really good OCR, and they're clearly their HTR is getting good too, but it's proprietary, right? They're not going to share it with anybody. If it's available in Google Books, yes, you can use it, but it's a black box. Like we don't really know precisely what goes into it. You cannot download their OCR models. They don't share them. Whereas what we're developing isn't just, we're not developing a proprietary platform, and none of the software that we're developing is proprietary. It can be, you can use it in eScriptorium, or you can take it and run with it in other contexts. Like either is fine with us.
Yeah.
We just prefer that you don't charge.
You have another question here.
Hi, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the IIIF support. I saw there was an import feature. Are you considering any kind of export features as well?
Yeah, so we do have the IIIF import feature. I can't say for sure if it's being considered as export. That's something I would have to check with the development team. I know that this is something that, particularly for libraries and for kind of archives, it's definitely of interest. But as far as the export goes, I'm not sure. But definitely for import, it should work pretty well. I know that most of our users so far, at least on our end, we've generally been using PDFs or individual files. But when I have tried using IIIF, it's worked. So something I should mention for anybody who's going to be using eScriptorium in the near future, at the moment, and I'm hoping that this will change, although I can't say with 100% certainty, there is an upward limit on PDF imports, and I want to say it's at like 150 megabytes, which for printed text is generally not an issue. For manuscripts, it can be. If for some reason you want to import a really big manuscript and it's 2 gigabytes, you have to split it up. So that's something to keep in mind. Because we've had people who trying to import something and it was a little annoying about the current iteration. It doesn't actually tell you that you've hit a size limit. It just doesn't do anything. It's kind of passive aggressive. But that's something that'll change in the future.
That's great.
We have other questions here. Other questions? Okay, Dale, it's back to you.
How is the segmentation coming?
It's still
working.
Oh my lord. I'm not,
Can we do
I don't
just like
know.
one page maybe?
So let me find a different document that's actually
Okay, sure,
segmented.
yeah. Even if it's just one page, because what I've realized, what my goal and DSIG's goal was to help the librarians understand what this looks like.
Yeah.
So that when we talk
I'll try
to
this.
people, researchers who come to us, we can say, okay, I know what this tool looks like. I can give you a sense of what's going to happen in this, what the process looks like.
So I've selected a page here that was previously, well, let me say, first, what I always encourage people to do, although I often forget to do it myself, is to check the segmentation. Because if a line, if the segmentation does not cover the entire line, and if the masking is not incorporating all the letter forms, then you'll automatically get errors in the transcription. And so here we go. You can see here's an error right here. This is actually a good example because I think this particular typeface, I don't think we have it represented in our data set. This is what is this, like 1893? So this was printed in St. Petersburg. So there weren't a ton of things printed in this particular typeface since we don't have it. And so here we have an issue that has to be corrected. That can be done pretty quickly. And once you make a correction, the masks automatically regenerate, which is really nice. You don't have to go in and draw them in.
So you were correcting how the mask was like connecting the two lines together,
yeah.
right? Okay.
It got, I think because this is a typeface that we don't have in our data set, right? For the most part, it's done quite well, right? Like it's recognized most of them, and I think the transcription will be good if we get to look at it. But there are some cases where it's not 100%. Okay. And so here you can see this is like we want to adjust that a little bit. It's not capturing that.
And then are these shed this for the most part that it's also not quite okay. All right.
So this one of the big issues that we had in kind of figuring out like the contours of OCR was like vowels and other orthographic stuff, and figuring out, do we want to include them? Do we want to exclude them? As it turned out, including them kind of perversely brought down our accuracy rates overall.
Mhm.
That said, if you have a fully vocalized text in print, you're more likely to see errors than in most text. I mean, fortunately, most printed texts are not fully vocalized, right? Like it's definitely a minority. With manuscripts, we're at the moment, and I think this will continue, we are including vocalization, and our hope is that HTR will be more robust with the vocalization, in part because manuscripts just tend to have more vocalization. They have generally a more complex orthographic apparatus,
Mhm.
and we think that's something that, for manuscripts in particular, is in many ways more essential to capture. All right, so I'm going to go now, and we'll see if the transcription, if it will run. So I'm going to click, and here you have a choice of models. As you can see, we've gone through a lot of models, but our most recent one is here.
So you have to select a model of
You have to
something.
select a model, and I will say, if you're interested in trying out eScriptorium, when you email me, I will generate your account and also send you the latest model, because I don't think it comes preloaded at the moment. I may be wrong. Eventually, it'll be preloaded with the best and most recent models.
Okay.
And so, for some reason, of course, it's being very slow. If we all avert our eyes for a couple minutes, it would probably start working. But it's
Okay,
always,
so
it's always
Peter's
something.
got a question in the chat. He asks, are examples of projects you help generate available publicly, or is eScriptorium just still in a test mode?
So okay, I see. So we will be publishing in the very near future a kind of test project that we did. So part of this kind of the last 2 years of we have so many acronyms because we have so many different streams of funding and stuff. I forgot all of them. But one of our deliverables, in the language of grants, was this pilot corpus of electronic texts generated using eScriptorium and our OCR models. So what we did, we created a bibliography of initially a few hundred, and we're now in the process of scaling it up to a couple thousand works in Arabic and Persian from across the kind of pre-modern, quote unquote, corpus in every genre we could think of. Kind of a twofold goal. One, as kind of proof of concept. So to show that we could do this at scale, that we could create, electronic text sufficient for, particularly for kind of quantifiable analytical projects, but for other things as well. And then second, to fill in the gaps. So OpenITI, in collaboration with the Kitab project out of Aga Khan, we have already a pretty big digital electronic corpus of Islamic texts, although the really Islamic is probably more appropriate because they're almost all Islamic. One of our goals with this project has been just to expand that corpus to make it properly Islamic hit and not just Islamic, and also to encompass genres that just weren't there. So for those of you who have been kind of mining text off the internet for the last decade or two, you'll know that there are certain biases kind of built in, right? Like if you go to Shamala or whatever sources, certain genres, certain authors, certain periods, certain madhabs and perspectives are overrepresented, and others are virtually absent. And so one of the things that we have done and that we're sort of continuing to work on is to begin to rectify this imbalance. And in the near future, we'll be publishing this initial corpus as a body of electronic texts. So that should be coming out pretty soon.
Excellent.
We have it's kind of like a lot of things we have right now where we're on the cusp of going from sort of beta release to actual public facing release very soon, inshallah. So. All right, so I don't know that this is going to complete, but let me see if I can find an uncorrected. Save my projects. And again, navigation is one of these things where we hope to improve in the near future. I run transcription on this. I hope I did. Yes. Okay, here we go. So I've not corrected this. So this is just us. All right, so we'll just see. Again, this is an example of a typefaced for which we don't have a good representation. This is I mean, it's not quite a one-off, but it was not used a lot. This is from early 19th century India. This is also actually kind of a good example of the scan quality here. It's not, I mean, it's not great. Like this is, the print quality is not the best and the scan quality is not the best. So you can see we have a bit of an error here. Got the P has been turned into a yeah. That said, this particular form of hair, I don't think we have, I mean, I don't remember any typeface that we incorporated that has that exact form of hair, and yet it's identified it correctly. So
Nice.
proud of it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And so just looking through here as I'm looking, any more errors?
Well, it looks like the second noon at the end of Pehlevan on.
Yeah, so it's tacked. Yeah, that's kind of that's incorrect. And again, I mean, it's very much, I think, a matter of the print quality.
Yes.
And this is something that, I think in the future, we will be able to leverage HTR advances into especially this kind of early print. Where you have, I mean, look, I mean, this was printed in, I think in Calcutta in like 1820 or something. They were working under suboptimal conditions, right? And so the print quality is not the greatest. So yeah, here, we're missing the dot on the Zal here. But otherwise, I mean, this is pretty good for a typeface that we did not have in our data set, and for a book that is, 200 years old, literally 200 years old. So, it's decent. That, and that said, if you wanted to use this text just for computational methods, I mean, this would probably be good enough, right? If you wanted something closer to a critical edition, you would probably want to go through and do a line-by-line correction. And in the near future, you will get kind of confidence estimates of overall accuracy that can kind of let you kind of clue you in on where you might need to do editing, which could be helpful in a case like this. They going through, I mean, it's pretty good. Thank goodness. It could have been really bad because I did not look at this before after I finished the segmentation.
So I have two questions for you, and then I should let others also ask questions. But when you're at this stage, and so you're looking at the transcription that you've been given, the output, this initial output, one, how are you going about your corrections? Are you, like, let's say you're doing a critical edition and you really do want it to be quite precise and loyal to the witness. How do you approach that as a researcher yourself?
Yeah, so this is somewhere where I think there could be real improvement in the platform. At present, if say you want to make annotations, right? So the way you would in, kind of a standard critical edition. I mean, you can do anything you want with with the platform, right? If you want to, transcribe exactly and then include in parentheses or brackets your own comments, you can do that, but it has to be within the line. What would be really nice, and I would love to see this in future iterations, would be to have maybe an additional line that's keyed into the line that you're correcting, right, or editing or annotating. At present, you can't do that, but I mean, you can really do whatever you want in terms of that transcription line. If you're generating training data, and which is what we've primarily been doing, you can still do that. It just has to be distinguishable from the main text. So, in fact, one of our colleagues recently did this. He transcribed a bunch of Drew's manuscripts, and he made his own annotations, but he did so using characters that do not appear in the manuscript itself. So our computer science guys can strip those annotations out quite easily and then just use the transcription.
So you wouldn't necessarily have to use, for example, TEI if you were doing those annotations.
No, not by hand. Now, something we actually, this is something we're going to be kind of looking at the next few weeks is seeing how well the TI export is actually doing, because it's a new feature that the development team has just recently added, and I think it's something that will definitely be improved over time.
Excellent. And so when you say that the annotations have to fit on that line, what exactly is the restriction? Like, is it a character restriction, or I don't even know what you would call it, the space of the line restriction?
Yeah, that's actually a good question. I don't, I don't know like how much text you can cram into a single line. I've never tried.
Yeah.
There has to be one, but yeah, I don't know
Okay,
I don't know what it is.
That's interesting. Okay. And then my other question was, you said that for computational purposes, it might not be necessary to correct that because the accuracy of it was enough for your purposes.
Yeah,
Can you
depending
elab-
on what you're doing, obviously.
Yeah. Can you elaborate more on that? On why that would be okay? And because I mean, this helps us think about as librarians, when can we say that's good enough?
Yeah.
For what we need to make available.
So I don't want to get too much out of my depth here. I'm just going to
Sure.
refer to other people's work.
Fine.
So our colleague Sarah Savant, whom I imagine many people will have at least be familiar with, she's done a great deal of work on kind of text reuse
Mhm.
stuff. So looking at where authors or whatever compilers, whatever you want to call them, the ways in which they drew upon previous texts, kind of rearranged it, incorporated it in different ways. So if you're thinking about say a later historian using Aptabari, so that's kind of one of the people she's worked on. If you're looking for examples of kind of block text reuse, so taking an entire section, like a topic or something, and plugging it into your own work. You don't need 98% accuracy to tell that that's happening, right? And in fact, I mean, oftentimes we know that when this reuse happens, the reuser might modify the text a little bit, right? Like he changes up some words here and there and rearranges lines. So these are things that reuse remains visible even when you have those modifications, and even if you don't have 100% accuracy. So a computational method like that is not going to be harmed by, at least not substantially, by a certain amount of kind of dirtiness in the data.
Yeah.
We recently started, it's very sort of kind of embryonic, but a project to do a phylogenetic analysis of the Shahnameh traditions, where we want to do something that's a bit different, but kind of looking at the, if you will, the evolutionary trajectory of the Shahnameh over the last 1,000 years or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. So we can't do this yet because we don't have the HTR, but our hope is that in a year or so we will have good enough HTR that we can look at these kind of big contours of the text, and then using, well, that'll do one thing, and then also kind of using that as a map, we can then do more fine-grained analysis. We can run our HTR on manuscripts, let's say we get 70% accuracy. We can see a lot of these areas of divergence and convergence and different things. And then when we want to do sort of finer grained phylogeny, we can pick parts of the text to then manually correct. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that does.
Because something I think is important to stress with HTR in particular, I don't think, now I think maybe some of my colleagues might differ a little bit, but I don't think that we'll ever reach the point where you can HTR a manuscript and then just read the output. I think it will always be supplemental to a direct human reading of the actual manuscript. So I think, and one of our hopes is that HTR in particular will kind of not replace paleography and codicology, but really more kind of supplement it and aid it as disciplines and as practices. So,
that's great.
and we're hoping with this sort of Shahnameh pilot project to kind of maybe do kind of a proof of concept of exactly that. Inshallah.
Excellent. That's wonderful. I'm going to stop talking for a little bit to let others ask questions, because I'm sure there must be other questions out there.
Other questions from the in-person attendees? I have a question. My question is actually probably you answered this, Jonathan, before, and I didn't pay attention to that. I'm sorry if this is the case, but I'm asking about if there's a specific researcher focusing on a specific type of resources in a specific script, and that researcher usually use these types of manuscripts from anywhere, specific time frame like 1800 or before or after, something like that. And if that person is able to annotate the lines and have corrections in the lines, does the tool allow some kind of intelligent learning that this situation will not repeat it again? This is the, not ra. This is ha, not wow, and so on. So some kind of that. And if that version is, if your answer is yes, and that person is actually saving these, and his version or her version or that person's version of the tool would be updated, other versions of the tool would be to have the same kind of concept. They learn kind of all together, or it's just that version in that specific researcher's hand.
Yeah, so at the moment, and I think if I understand your question correctly, if say you have a bunch of manuscripts in a particular style of script that's relatively stable, right? And it does have to be pretty stable and consistent. You can definitely generate your own models. So if you think about, you annotate, you transcribe an entire manuscript in this style, say 100 folios or something. That'd be a lot of training data. You could generate a model using that training data that would then recognize other examples of that particular script style and hand. Now, and this is something that other platforms allow. I will say, it's not kind of revolutionary on our part. The main problem is that within the manuscript tradition, script style varies a lot, and then individual hands can vary quite a bit, right? I mean, if you think, even within a given manuscript, the same scribe, like that scribe's hand might, vary substantially from one end of the text to the other for whatever reasons, switches from Nas to Nastalik, or just gets tired, or his cat, steps on the things. What we want to do, and this is why we're pursuing HTR in the way that we are, is we would like to have a generalizable model that can be applied kind of across the board. So, not just for one particular script style or one particular hand, but, in general. That said, at the moment, if people want to use eScriptorium to generate their own models for their own, corpus, they can definitely do that. That model, though, will, and this goes to the second part of your question, they may choose to share it, but it will not kind of automatically be added to eScriptorium as a whole, right? So the data that you generate, and I should stress this, that will be your data. we're not going to go in and like take it from you without asking. As tempting as that might be, we would love for people to share your any data that you generate with us. Like, we can use it, whether it's in print or in manuscript, but that's up to you. We're not going to be lurking behind the scenes, taking your data.
Great, thank you. Other questions from in person or online? Dale, you watch the chat, right? Great.
I've got the chat, don't worry.
Okay, great. So in person, other questions, thoughts? Yes.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I'm wondering what's the best DPI resolution do you recommend for the Arabic transcription?
It's a good question. So one of the things we set out to do, and I think one of the strengths of eScriptorium is, I don't want to say that DPI doesn't matter, but it's not super important. You should get pretty good results regardless. And we would like, because we realize that people are going to have so many different ways of digitizing the text that they want to upload. You might be taking pictures of a book, in the library with your iPhone. Those images should be pretty good. The only thing I will say that you do have to be careful with, we've noticed, you want your images to be squared up. If you're taking pictures with your phone, that should be okay. But if they're all tilted and kind of out of whack, that's something you'll need to manually correct beforehand. Otherwise, it creates problems with the software. But things like resolution, you may encounter some issues here and there, but in general, it's a vast range is supported.
Other questions?
We got one in the chat. I'll read it so that
Mm,
the in-person folks can hear too, just in case.
Mm.
Is the accuracy of non-Latin and Latin scripts comparable in mixed script examples?
So this is also something that I think we need to work on. At the moment, if you run our Arabic script OCR on a text with Latin script, the Latin script will be pretty garbled. So this is something, it's pretty tricky. And I know that our computer science people, this is something that they would like to kind of refine. But it's definitely it's a difficult problem because you're switching from one, not just from one script to another, but from one line direction to another. So it's definitely an issue. So we'll see in the future.
I've actually encountered a fair amount in a periodical that we've been digitizing and playing around with OCR. English and other European names rendered in Arabic script, and then seeing it come back OCR and seeing what, in this case, Tesseract makes of it. It's fascinating. So.
Yeah. No, it will confuse it. So. Right. Any other? Everybody's heard enough.
Well, I have one more question for you on a practical level. With these instances that you're talking about, which is a familiar concept in terms of getting software licenses and whatnot for our institutions, but you talk about an instance at the University of Maryland. Are there other institutions that also are sponsoring instances, and how might folks reach out or see about setting up their own instance? Is that even necessary? Should they just be working through, if you're in North America, work through the University of Maryland, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, we would love for other people to set up, their own instances. It's just you have to have dedicated server capacity, which is not, we don't generally didn't have that lying around. So there are other instances. I don't have a list. I mean, I'm pretty sure that Princeton, that they have a dedicated instance because they've been using with the Geniza project, they've been using eScriptorium as well. And Marina Rosto and her team have been doing a lot of work. In terms of kind of piggybacking off of their instance, I don't know what their sort of current capacity is. I don't know if anybody else in North America has a dedicated instance or not. I know that like if you wanted to set one up, it's definitely doable. Like from our side of things, that is not an issue. I think it's having the dedicated server capacity. So.
Right. But if folks want like individual access when they email you, that's going to be on the University of Maryland.
It'll be on our instance. So.
All right. Well, if there aren't any other questions, I want to thank you very much, Jonathan, for joining us today and sharing eScriptorium with us. And I hope you will hear from lots of librarians soon.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. I love to talk. Well, I love to talk, but it's especially nice to talk about the work that we've been doing. Not to sound sappy, but we have put in a lot of labor into the stuff the last couple of years. And it was not the most optimal time to do a lot of what we were doing. If the pandemic had happened now, it'd be fine because we're not doing as much with like physical material anymore. But it was, I mean, obviously other people had some issues too the last couple of years. But
well, I hope
nice
you'll
use
highlight
our
out
work.
that there was still this physical aspect of all of this digital work that you're trying to do, right?
Yeah.
That the physical is still important to all of this, essential to it, the foundation of it. Because I think that's something that often gets lost in the digital humanities, digital scholarship conversations.
I would encourage everyone, there's a recent book, I forget the author's name, somebody probably know, but Digital Codicology that came out like last week, actually, I think, that looks at just this exact question. Because it's so easy. Oh my goodness, I promise I'll end here, but it is really easy when we use these digital resources to forget that there are a bunch of like actual human beings involved. And when you're reading a manuscript, you're constantly reminded of the physicality and of the sort of, if you will, personality of the scribe, right? You might be really angry at that person, but you know that he or she is back there, right? Because you're deciphering this individual hand. But as you move along in the trajectory of print communicative technology, when you get to the digital world, most of the traces of those people who brought you these texts disappear. And they've become more and more sort of invisible over the last few years. Like in the digital codicology book, she opens with noting that over time, Google Books has gotten rid of these kind of ghostly hand traces, where somebody will be scanning the book and their hand is there. Like oh yes. They're not even visible anymore. They've erased them quite literally. And so I think it is very important that we remember that human beings are doing this stuff. They're scanning the books. They're, generating the metadata. They're doing all this different labor. So anyway, that's my soapbox thing.
Thank you so much, Jonathan and Dale, for this wonderful panel and discussion, and very useful indeed. I heard a comment from one of the very expert IT here was saying that it's great to really have this type of conversation with librarians where doing digital humanities projects and learning about IT and computer to computer and computerizing text and enhancing manuscripts. He was kind of amazed at how much work actually done on manuscripts that enhances and make them available online and digitized and can be used in so many ways when they are digital versus paper or manuscripts. Thank you so much again. And this would conclude the panel with Dale and Jonathan. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, have a good day.